I still remember the first day I met Jake. It was move-in day at Westfield University, and I was struggling to carry a particularly heavy box up 3 flights of stairs when he appeared beside me, grabbed the other end, and flashed that easy smile that would eventually become both my comfort and my torment. "Need a hand?" he asked, and I nodded gratefully, trying not to stare too obviously at his athletic build or the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. That was 2 years ago, and somehow we'd managed to not only survive as roommates, but become best friends despite our differences. Jake was everything I wasn't: outgoing, athletic, and seemingly effortlessly popular with everyone he met. He was also straight. Very straight. The kind of straight that involved a rotating cast of girlfriends and stories about wild hookups that I pretended to find amusing while secretly feeling that twist of jealousy I'd become all too familiar with. I'd come out during our first semester together, nervous about how my new roommate would react. But Jake had just shrugged and said, "Cool, man. Doesn't change anything." And true to his word, it hadn't. We fell into an easy friendship, the kind where you can sit in comfortable silence or talk until 3 in the morning about everything and nothing. Our apartment was small but comfortable. 2 bedrooms separated by a modest living area with a kitchenette that had seen more takeout containers than actual cooking. The walls were thin enough that I could hear when Jake had company, which meant I developed the habit of wearing headphones more often than not. Living with Jake was a daily exercise in restraint. I wasn't in love with him, at least that's what I told myself, but I couldn't deny the attraction. It was something I'd learned to live with, like a chronic condition you manage but never quite cure. I dated other guys, had my own hookups, but there was always that awareness of Jake in the background of my life, like a song you can't get out of your head. It was a Friday night in late October when everything changed. The kind of autumn evening where the air turns crisp and carries the scent of fallen leaves and possibility. We were both home for once. Jake's latest girlfriend had broken up with him the week before, and I wasn't seeing anyone at the moment. We'd ordered pizza and were sprawled across our mismatched furniture, the remains of dinner on the coffee table between us. Jake had a big game coming up. He played center midfielder on the university soccer team, and had spent the afternoon at an intense practice session. "Coach is killing us," he groaned, rolling his shoulders back. "My muscles feel like they've been put through a meat grinder." He stretched, his t-shirt riding up slightly to reveal a strip of tanned skin and the trail of dark hair that disappeared beneath his waistband. I quickly looked away, focusing intently on the last slice of pizza, as if it held the secrets of the universe. "That's what you get for being the star athlete," I replied, aiming for a teasing tone that wouldn't reveal how affected I was by even that small glimpse of his body. "Some of us have to suffer through 3-hour lectures on Victorian literature instead." Jake laughed, that easy, open sound that always made me smile despite myself. "Trade you any day, man. My brain's too fried for anything that complicated." He shifted again, wincing slightly. "Seriously though, I'm wrecked. My back is killing me." I made a sympathetic noise, reaching for the remote to find something mindless to watch. This was our usual Friday routine: bad TV, good food, and the kind of comfortable companionship that comes from knowing someone well enough to be yourself around them. But then Jake said something that made me freeze, my finger hovering over the channel button. "Hey, you know what would be awesome? A back rub." He said it so casually, as if he were asking me to pass the pizza. "You're good with your hands, right? All that typing for your English papers." I turned to look at him, certain I'd misheard. "You want me to give you a back rub?" My voice came out higher than I intended, and I cleared my throat. "I mean, I'm not exactly a professional masseuse." Jake shrugged, apparently oblivious to my internal panic. "Better than nothing. My muscles are in knots, and you're always talking about how your mom's a physical therapist. You must have picked up something, right?" It was true. My mother had been a physical therapist for 20 years, and I'd grown up watching her work her magic on injured athletes and post-surgery patients. I'd even helped her study for her certification renewals, quizzing her on muscle groups and techniques. But this was different. This was Jake. Jake, who walked around our apartment in just a towel after showering. Jake, whose body I'd been carefully not staring at for 2 years. My mind raced with reasons to say no. This was a terrible idea. This was crossing a line I'd carefully drawn for myself. This would only make my inconvenient attraction worse. But then Jake looked at me with those expectant eyes, wincing as he rolled his shoulder again, and I found myself nodding. "Sure, I guess I could try." I said, attempting to sound nonchalant. But don't blame me if I make it worse. Jake's face lit up with relief. You're a lifesaver, man. Seriously. He shifted forward on the couch, turning his back to me. Just do what you can. Anything's better than how it feels right now. I wiped my suddenly sweaty palms on my jeans, trying to approach this clinically. This was just helping out a friend, nothing more. People gave their friends massages all the time, right? It didn't have to mean anything. I could do this. I moved closer, tentatively placing my hands on his shoulders through his t-shirt. Even through the fabric, I could feel the heat of his skin and the tension in his muscles. He really was knotted up. I could feel the tightness under my fingertips. I began to press gently, using the techniques I'd seen my mother use countless times. Damn, that feels good, Jake murmured, his head dropping forward slightly. You've been holding out on me. Could have been getting free massages this whole time. I laughed, the sound a bit strained. Don't get used to it. This is a one-time friend discount. I worked my thumbs along his spine, feeling the tension there. His t-shirt was bunching up, making it difficult to apply the right pressure. I can't really get to the muscles properly through your shirt, I said hesitantly. Without hesitation, Jake reached back and pulled his shirt over his head in one fluid motion, tossing it aside. Better? He asked, and I was grateful he couldn't see my face in that moment. Better was not the word I would have chosen. His back was a landscape of lean muscle and smooth skin, marred only by a fading bruise on his left shoulder blade, probably from a rough tackle during practice. A light dusting of freckles covered his shoulders, and I had the absurd urge to trace constellations between them. I swallowed hard, reminding myself that this was just a friendly gesture, nothing more. Yeah, that's better. I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. I placed my hands back on his bare shoulders, feeling the warmth of his skin against my palms. I tried to channel my mother's professional demeanor, focusing on the knots in his muscles rather than the fact that this was Jake, shirtless, under my hands. I worked methodically, starting at his shoulders and moving down his back, using my thumbs to press into the tight spots along his spine. Jake made small sounds of appreciation, little hums and sighs that sent my heart racing despite my best efforts to remain detached. His skin was smooth under my hands, and I could feel the solid strength of him, the result of years of athletic training. God, that feels amazing, he murmured, his voice lower than usual. Right there, that's where it's been killing me. I focused on the spot between his shoulder blades, working my fingers in small circles. The room suddenly felt too warm, too small. I was acutely aware of every point of contact between us, of the rhythm of his breathing, of the faint scent of his shampoo. You're really good at this, Jake said, his voice slightly muffled as his head hung forward. Seriously, you missed your calling. I laughed, the sound a bit shaky. I'll stick with English literature, thanks. Less intimate. The word hung in the air between us, and I immediately wished I could take it back. Jake didn't seem to notice my discomfort. Can you go lower? My lower back is tight too. I hesitated for a fraction of a second before moving my hands down, working on the muscles just above his waistband. His skin was warm under my touch, and I could feel the subtle shift of muscle as he adjusted his position. I was trying desperately to keep my thoughts professional, to ignore the way my heart was pounding in my chest. That's perfect, Jake sighed, his voice a low rumble that I could feel under my hands. You have no idea how much I needed this. I worked in silence for a few minutes, focusing on the tension in his lower back. This was fine. This was normal. Friends did this for each other all the time. I was just helping out a friend who was in pain. Nothing more. And then Jake shifted, turning over to face me, his bare chest now directly in my line of sight. Could you do my shoulders from the front? They're still pretty tight. I froze, my hands hovering awkwardly in the air between us. This was different. This was face to face, with Jake looking directly at me, his eyes half-lidded with relaxation. I could see the definition of his chest, the light trail of hair that ran down the center and disappeared into his sweatpants. This was dangerous territory. I stammered, not sure how to respond. Jake was looking at me expectantly, apparently completely comfortable with the situation. Sure. I finally managed, moving my hands to his shoulders, now facing him. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in his gaze, something beyond the casual friendship we'd maintained for 2 years. But it was gone so quickly I was sure I'd imagined it. a product of my own wishful thinking. I worked on his shoulders, trying to maintain a clinical approach, but it was impossible to ignore the intimacy of the position. We were close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath, see the individual flecks of gold in his hazel eyes. His chest rose and fell steadily under my gaze, and I forced myself to look at my hands instead, watching my fingers press into the muscle rather than meeting his eyes. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said suddenly, his voice quieter than before. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Have you ever been attracted to me?" The question hit me like a physical blow. My hands stilled on his shoulders, and I felt a rush of panic. Had I been that obvious? Had he noticed the way I sometimes looked at him when I thought he wasn't paying attention? Was he uncomfortable with it? Was this the end of our friendship? I managed, buying time, trying to figure out how to respond. Denial seemed like the safest option, but lying to Jake felt wrong after 2 years of honesty between us. Jake didn't look angry or disgusted. If anything, he looked curious. "It's okay if you have," he said, his voice still quiet. "I'm just asking." I took a deep breath, deciding that after 2 years of friendship, Jake deserved the truth. "Yes," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "But I've never acted on it. I would never do anything to make you uncomfortable or jeopardize our friendship." I expected him to pull away, to create some distance between us. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "I thought so," he said. "Sometimes I catch you looking at me a certain way." I felt my face flush with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I've tried not to be obvious about it. It doesn't have to change anything between us." Jake was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching my face. Then he said something that made my heart stop. "What if I wanted to?" I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "What?" Jake ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as one of his nervous habits. "I've been thinking about it a lot lately. About you. About us." He looked away, then back at me. "I've never been with a guy before. Never really thought about it. But lately, I don't know. There's something here, isn't there? Between us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This had to be some kind of cruel joke or a misunderstanding. "Jake, you're straight," I said, stating what had been an immutable fact in my world for 2 years. He shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Maybe not as straight as I thought." He reached out, his hand hovering near my face before gently touching my cheek. "Is that okay?" My mind was reeling. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen in real life. Straight roommates didn't suddenly decide they were interested in you after 2 years of friendship. And yet, here was Jake, looking at me with an openness I'd never seen before, his hand warm against my skin. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just curiosity or boredom because you're between girlfriends?" Jake shook his head. "I've been thinking about this for months. I just didn't know how to bring it up. Didn't know if you'd be interested, or if it would ruin everything between us." He laughed softly. The back rub wasn't entirely innocent. "I thought maybe it would. I don't know. Break the ice somehow." I couldn't help but laugh at that. "That was your master plan? Ask for a back rub and hope for the best." He grinned, that familiar smile that had always made my heart skip a beat. Not my smoothest move, I admit. But it worked, didn't it? I was still trying to process what was happening. Jake, my straight roommate, my friend, the subject of countless fantasies I'd never allowed myself to fully indulge, was sitting shirtless in front of me, telling me he was interested in me. It felt like a dream, the kind I'd wake from with a mixture of disappointment and relief. "What exactly are you saying, Jake?" I needed clarity, needed to know exactly what he was offering before I let myself believe it. Jake took a deep breath. "I'm saying I'm attracted to you. I'm saying I want to explore that, if you're interested. I'm saying that maybe labels like straight and gay aren't as fixed as I always thought they were." He looked at me, vulnerability clear in his eyes. "I'm saying I'd like to kiss you, if that's something you want to." The world seemed to narrow to just this moment, just the two of us on our worn couch, the remains of our pizza dinner forgotten on the coffee table. I'd imagined this scenario in countless variations, but the reality of it, Jake's earnest expression, the warmth of his hand still resting on my cheek, was better than any fantasy. "Yes," I said simply. "I want that too." Jake smiled, a mixture of relief and anticipation crossing his face. He leaned forward slowly, giving me time to back away if I wanted to. But backing away was the last thing on my mind. I met him halfway, and when our lips touched, it was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a declaration. He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching mine. "Okay," he asked softly. In answer, I kissed him again, more confidently this time. His lips were soft, his stubble a pleasant friction against my skin. He made a small sound in the back of his throat, his hand moving from my cheek to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing harder. Jake's eyes were wide, a look of wonder on his face. "Wow," he said simply. "That was..." "Yeah," I agreed, unable to stop the smile spreading across my face. "It was..." We sat there for a moment, just looking at each other, the air between us charged with possibility. 2 years of friendship had created a foundation of trust and understanding that made this moment feel both monumental and natural at the same time. "So what happens now?" I asked, voicing the question that was uppermost in my mind. This was uncharted territory for both of us. For me, being with someone who had never been with a man before. For Jake, exploring a side of himself he hadn't acknowledged until now. Jake took my hand, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm. "Now we figure it out together," he said. Slowly. No pressure. We're still us, still friends, still roommates. But maybe also something more. He looked at me, a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. "Is that okay with you?" I nodded, squeezing his hand. "More than okay." I paused, then added, "But Jake, are you sure about this? It's a big step, and people might not understand." He considered this for a moment, then shrugged. "I'm not sure about a lot of things. I don't know what label fits me, or how people will react, or where this goes from here. But I am sure about you, about how I feel when I'm with you." He smiled, that crooked smile that had always made my heart race. "The rest we can figure out as we go." The honesty in his voice was reassuring. This wasn't a whim or an experiment for him. It was something he'd been considering for months, something he'd thought through, that meant more to me than any declaration of certainty could have. "So," I said, a teasing note entering my voice, "does this mean I'll be giving more back rubs in the future?" Jake laughed, pulling me closer. "Definitely. Though next time, maybe we can skip straight to the good part." I smiled against his lips as he kissed me again, marveling at how quickly the impossible had become reality. My straight roommate had asked for a back rub, taken off his shirt, turned over, and somehow, in the process, turned my world upside down in the best possible way. That night marked the beginning of something new between us. Not the end of our friendship, but an evolution of it. We took things slowly, as Jake had suggested, learning this new dimension of our relationship one step at a time. There were awkward moments and uncertainties, questions from friends, and adjustments to make. But there was also joy and discovery and the deep comfort of being with someone who knew you completely and chose you anyway. Looking back now, I can't help but smile at how it all began. A simple request on a Friday night, a moment of courage from both of us, and everything changed. Sometimes the most extraordinary beginnings come from the most ordinary moments. Sometimes the person you've been looking for has been right in front of you all along, just waiting for the right moment to turn over and see you clearly for the first time. And sometimes, when you least expect it, the impossible becomes possible, and you find yourself exactly where you're meant to be, even if it's in the last place you ever thought to look. Total _char_count, 18,767.